Welcome to another episode of Money You Should Ask. I'm your host, Bob Wheeler, and in this episode, we're going to explore, question, examine, converse, dig deep, expose, laugh, and cry about the money beliefs, money blocks, and life challenges of our next guest. Turn up the volume, listen, learn, and laugh. I'd like to thank our sponsor, The Money Nerve, a financial resource that helps you have a healthier relationship with money. Do you feel shame around your past financial decisions? Do you feel alone in your financial struggles? Do you self-sabotage your potential financial successes? Do you keep making the same choices, expecting different results? The Money Nerve has just launched a new online course called The Course to Financial Freedom. To learn more, go to themoneynerve.com/course. The Money Nerve has an offer to all Money You Should Ask listeners for a 25% discount on the course. Use code MYSA, all caps, 25, and start your course to financial freedom now. I am super excited today. We have another amazing guest who hails to us from Atlanta at the moment. We have with us artist Maggie Davis, who has done several solo exhibitions, public exhibitions, publications, published works, a whole range of things. And it's also, I want to point out that she's also done a lot of community service with her art. And I want to talk a little bit about that when we get in. One of the things that I really liked is that Maggie says that storytelling has had a role in art from the earliest cave paintings to contemporary realism. As long as there is an identifiable image, the potential for creating a narrative is present, no matter the subject of the work. So that will be fun to talk about. And the biggest excitement is that Maggie is currently working on a legacy project called the Anti-Retrospective Project. And I want to hear about that. It sounds pretty awesome. And it sounds multi-dimensional, multimedia. And we'll talk a little bit about all of that. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, Bob, thank you. This feels like it's going to be fun.
We're going to have fun. So let me ask you this. Let's just start right off the bat. You're an artist. Were your parents excited that you were going to be artists? And did they support that?
Are you kidding me? I'm the firstborn in my family, and I was talented from the very beginning. I mean, they identified me as an artist. But when it came time to really actually follow that as a career, that was a no-go. And, I was pretty disappointed because I did understand the distinction between choosing a life as an artist versus being trained as a teacher. Now, there's a story there, and eventually I did become an art educator. So they did get their way, but I also got my way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let me ask you this. As a child, what was the message from your parents about success, money, and career?
Well, I grew up in the early 50s. I was born in 44. And my parents were not, they were working class by all measures. My dad worked in a factory until he was he had been in the Army Air Corps, so he learned to fly, and he was eventually able to get his pilot's license. And Pan Am was hiring in the early 50s, and so he was able to pull himself out of what would have been basically a very, modest life to become an airline pilot. And so our life changed in the 50s. And so the message was you can start out poor, but you can eventually make enough money to support your family and lead a basically middle-class life. I remember when we bought our first home. I think I was about 12, maybe 11 or 12. Yeah.
Wow. And did you get an allowance?
Well, that was sort of intermittent. Occasionally, yes, there'd be an allowance to, tied to chores. I think that my earliest memories about money came from my grandmother, who was a cashier at Horn and Hardart automats in Manhattan.
Okay.
And when we visited her, she would give us, the grandchildren, silver dollars.
Wow.
Because she would get them through the automat. And so that was a really big deal. I mean, they were beautiful and they were big and it was money.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was my very earliest experience of money, but I didn't understand what it really meant.
Do you remember the first time you got a large amount of money that felt like, wow, this is a large amount of money, even if it was $20? Do you remember the first time, like?
Well, there probably were times when I was younger, like when my great aunt died, she left me $500. I was on my own by then. And so I used it to buy a really high-end radio speaker system for my Volkswagen camper.
Wow. You had a Volkswagen camper?
I did. I had Beetles too before that.
Oh my goodness. Did you, do you like to camp? Did you take it out a lot?
Oh, I used to go camping, and I actually, I love to travel. I love to drive. And so that was one of the reasons for having a camper.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you find from the beginning that when you went into, so you did some teaching, you were an art educator, but was there a little voice in the back of your head that said, going into art is going to be a life of struggle? And how did you decide, regardless of what the story is, to stick with your passion or to follow your passion versus following stability?
Yeah. Well, you know, the identifying as an artist happened very early. I was 5 years old when I would sit on the floor in the kitchen and draw pictures, and that never stopped. So the idea of being an artist is almost part of my DNA, and it never occurred to me that I would not be an artist. It never occurred to me to worry about money. It just didn't occur to me. All I knew was that I had to be that artist, and I would find a way to support that. I also knew that being an artist was going to require, and this was more intuitive, that it was a solo adventure.
Yeah.
It was not a husband and family adventure.
Right.
It was, even though there were times when I did want that, I just could not let the artist take second place to anything else.
Wow,
So,
that's awesome. That's a commitment. That is a commitment.
It was a commitment.
Now, you have successful artists in your family history.
Yeah. And they were honored by my family. They're on my father's side. My parents took me to see an exhibition by my cousin William Steeple Davis, who was living. He had died, and there was an exhibition of his work on Eastern Long Island where he lived. And so we went to see that, and I was very impressed. I mean, there was a lot of work, and it was really good, and it was interesting. And his legacy has been left in perpetuity. His studio and his home at Orient Point still exist and are maintained. And so he was a cousin. But my great-grandfather was an artist as well. And I have an uncle who was an artist. They were illustrators and artists. William was also a photographer, and they had long reputations, and their work has been held in institutions, and it survived. And I own some of their work.
Oh, so awesome.
Every day I honor my great-grandfather for the DNA that he allowed to flow down into my veins.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this. Are there any financial obstacles in your path of being an artist?
I think, of course. Now, I did choose to be a teacher, so I always had an income, but that income wasn't always adequate. And being an artist does kind of eat up income. But I never let that get in the way of making the work. So were there times when I was down to my last $5? Oh, yeah. But I think that I have an instinct for survival, and it never got so bad that my life was that I was going to be homeless or, deprived in that way. I think the instinct, the combination of commitment to living the life of an artist and the instinct for survival were two operants in my life. Plus, I had a skill that I could market, and the skill was teaching, and I was a very good teacher. I have students that are still in touch with me on Facebook from 30 years ago.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
I did a good job there.
That's great. Well, so as an educator, because you were also an art educator, I'm curious because I know we talked a little bit about this before we joined into the conversation, but I know for me, I was really torn between creativity and financial security. My mom was an artist, but never had any income. And it felt like money was always going to cover that. And, there might not be money to pay rent, but there was always money to pay for art supplies. And there was a part of me that just said, I don't want any of that because I want to make sure I don't want to go hungry and I want stability. And I really struggled with that for a while. And then I think I had a reconciliation. But what would you say to young people that struggle with that of like, I have this passion and I want financial security. It's not going to happen, or?
Of course it can happen. Yes. I mean, my life is testimony to that. And, the traditional route, the one that that sells MFA programs is that you get an FMA and then an MFA, and then you can teach in a university. Well, that's hogwash. We turn out MFAs left and right, and they don't get employed as university faculty. Now, I did have a couple of stints at museums. I was a museum educator for a while. There are many, many more opportunities for artists to earn a living. And I have to make this equation that if you have a passion for this and you can't not do it, you must find a way to make a living, because if you don't, you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah.
Because you won't be able to make the art if you cannot also make a living for yourself. There are ways to do this, and I know lots of artists that are doing it. My way was education, but you can be a muralist, you can be an art consultant, you can be a curator. There are many, many ways to make a living as an artist without having to be a starving artist. I never, ever bought into that role.
Great.
I did not accept it.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, I'm going to make an assumption here, but I would imagine that community service is an important part of your life and of your artistry.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Well, painting, I'm a painter, and it is an isolated experience. It can only be done in a room that's quiet or music, whatever, but it can't be done with a crowd. It's done in isolation. It's like poetry So we don't have a public sphere. And the thing about art is that it's not limited to the object that's made. It's part of who we are as communicators and in relationship to others. So working in ways that can support the arts through community service. It's really important. Now, I was lucky. I was invited. I started a Women's Caucus for Art chapter in Sarasota, Florida, when I was living there. I was active in the feminist art movement. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I was, working in studio spaces where we could create community activity. I also did that down in Florida. So, I wound up on the board of the Zuckerman Museum at Kennesaw State. I've been on the board for the Women's Caucus for Art here in Atlanta. And I've done significant community work for the city of Roswell in their getting their arts 10-year plan off the ground. I was working with consultants and a team in Roswell to do that. So, giving back is really important. And I also mentor artists now. Mm-hmm. I'm not teaching, but I am mentoring artists who are committed and serious and want their work not to be successful in terms of money, but to be successful in terms of communicating.
That's awesome.
Which will in turn earn them money.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that women have a bigger hill to climb as Absolutely.
Absolutely. The first solo show I had was in Miami in the early 70s. And when I was in the gallery, it was the Gloria Luria Gallery. I was in the gallery one day meeting with Gloria to talk about the show. And there was a woman collector had come in, and Gloria introduced her to me and said that this is Maggie Davis, an artist. And the woman flat out said, "Oh, I don't collect women artists."
Women supporting women.
I mean, I knew that instinctively from high school. And I used to sign my name, M. Davis. And somebody said, "Why do you do that?" I said, "Because I don't want to know I'm a female. Because people don't buy women's artwork." Well, that obstacle has been well documented. And I didn't buy into it until the feminist movement started in the 70s. And I said, "Yeah, why is this a problem? What's the problem here?" And of course, I became active and consciousness raising groups and learned how to speak up for myself and take the reins of my life. I mean, that's an ongoing project. Mm-hmm. There are still times when that little voice that says, "No, Maggie, this is a vocation," which I hear from time to time. Mm-hmm. And I say, "No, it's not." And once I put my website up and I looked at work from the 1970s to the 2000s, I realized I've been doing this my whole life. I've been doing this my whole life. This is what I set out to do, and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I think that needs to be celebrated. And
absolutely.
That's what led me to this anti-retrospective project.
That's awesome. I love that there's success there financially and artistically and a willingness to claim it. I think so many people hesitate to say, "Yeah, I've shown up. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the things that artists, and I work with younger artists too, they don't understand that at some point you will have been practicing this for 10 years. You may be doing it on a week-by-week or month-by-month basis or project-to-project basis, but 10 years is going to roll around. 20 years is going to roll around. And you're going to be able to look back and see who you have been to the world and, of course, to yourself. And it's a good idea to take it seriously now and not wait. Yeah. I mean, I'm involved in the archive project, so I'm documenting everything I've done. I'm documenting all of the materials that I have, and it's going into archival either on the website or in the context of the anti-retrospective project.
That's so awesome. That is awesome. I'm going to change the subject slightly, and I'm wondering, do you have any negative beliefs around money?
Well, I don't care about it.
Okay, well, I don't know that that's negative. But
Really?
are there, I mean, do you see other people with money and people with lots of money or this, or money creates stress or just any?
I think money engenders greed, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think, there was a report today about one of our leading lights in the world is now a centibillionaire. My response is, how much is enough?
Right. Yeah.
Really, how much is enough?
Yeah.
And, I had a windfall yesterday. I took some work to a client in the city, and she bought 4 paintings. That's a windfall for me. That doesn't happen very often. So, it's very exciting because it's an affirmation. I mean, all of the things that it is not the money.
Right.
It's an affirmation. It's an affirmation of a commitment that I made many, many years, decades ago. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's where the connection to money is. It's not. I mean, that's what I said. Money doesn't matter to me.
Right.
It's something else that matters. And anyway. That money will be used to fund the anti-retrospective project.
Awesome.
So there it is.
There it is.
It comes when it's needed.
Yeah. And what do you want your art, or what is the main storyline of your art? Is there a through line from your perspective? And then is there something that you want people to take away from your art?
Well, I just was working on a new statement for my website, and persistence is obviously sort of the theme here, that there was never an obstacle that crossed my path that I was going to let derail me. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was as conscious as that. I just knew that making art was the thing that was going to enable me to thrive in my life. And it's a passion, and it's a love relationship, and it's connected to living. So I think, I'm just going to read a little part of what we were working on yesterday. How I live is a life that's persistent in the world as an artist. And I redefine success as creating work that moves people to own it and to share that gift forward. So it's not about me, and it's not about money. It's about the gift, the legacy I have as an artist. It comes through my DNA, thank you. And then it's the fulfillment of that is the gift, and it gets passed on, both in the work that I make and then in the work that people own, because it gets passed on, and it might go to auction, or it might be donated to a museum, or some public institution, a library. That's how the work lives on, and it's not about me. It's about what's in the work. And so the other thing that I say about the work is, I always come back to the mark, which is the mark of the brush on the canvas, is an affirmation of my coming into being. It's an affirmation that I existed. And to make something like that, it unconceals, it reveals what it means to be, right? When I look at my great-grandfather's pastel drawing that he did in France, where he was studying, it's who he was. He's right there in front of me, and I'm in front of that drawing, and I am there. I have the same experience when I look at the old masters, when I stand in front of a Vermeer and say, I'm standing where Vermeer stood. That is extraordinary, to be able to be in that space. So it's the most essential journey that I've been on. And I hope to share it with whoever wants to hear about it.
That's awesome. It's interesting as you were saying that. I was thinking about, some people come into the earth, come here and sort of move on, and we don't necessarily have evidence of their presence or their having been here. And with artists, the legacy does live on through painting, through sculpture, through mobiles, and all those. It's like tangible evidence of an existence. That's really, really cool. That's really cool.
We all have something to leave behind.
We do. Yeah. We absolutely do. Do you have any financial regrets? Or, looking back, I wished, or I'm right where I need to be?
I am right where I need to be. I have no financial regrets. I have had in terms of the art world, moderate success. I'm happy with that. Mm-hmm. I don't need to be an art star. I am an art star. And all I have to do is talk with one of my mentors, and I see that. It's getting passed on, and that's what matters to me. And the studio that I have, when I moved to Athens, and I was able to buy a condominium that's in a 19th century mill. Mm. So I have extraordinary light, and the building is on a river. It's on the Oconee River, and it's wooded, and I have deer and raccoons and all of that, and I have lots of great neighbors. And I'm in a town that's, easy to be in, not the traffic. So I am in exactly the place I should be in.
That's awesome. If money were no option, is there anything that you would add to your palette of life?
Yeah, I probably would buy a house up in the mountains. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would just be a nice way to be able to get away, especially right now with the pandemic.
Yeah,
I'm still very lucky to have this beautiful land that I live on, but it would be nice to get away. That's all.
Yeah, that's okay. And what do you love to spend money on? If what are your guilty pleasures? Is there anything that it doesn't matter the cost? This is a fun indulgent.
I am a fool about books.
About books.
Yes. In fact, I keep buying them as I box them up and donate them to UGA's library. I am a fool about it. A total, absolute fool.
That's awesome. Now, do you read all the books?
Most of them, yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of them are art books. So, these are research projects. I mean, it's all part of the game. I'm also very deeply steeped in philosophy and the philosophy of Heidegger. And so I'm real interested in that heavier reading. I don't always read all those books.
No, that's awesome. Well, the reason I'm asking is I've got about 6 or 7 bookshelves, and I love to get books. And I was looking at the other day, and I said, I've got to figure out a system to start reading all of them, because sometimes I buy like 10 books and I get behind. So I have all these books at some point I'm going to read. So
it's really a rich experience. I mean, it's another world. When you open a book, you've entered another world. And it's the best vacation.
Absolutely. Were your parents avid readers? Did they encourage the love of books, or was that something developed?
My mother was, my parents came from, my father's family had wealth, and then they lost it in the Depression. My mother's family were just dirt poor Irish, Brooklyn. Both families were in Brooklyn. But my mother was a reader and also loved language. So she made us pronounce our T's. And she was really a stinker about that.
Yeah.
So, and I remember as a kid, I must have been 6 years old, that she had a book called The Red and the Black. And it was very thick, and it was by Stendhal. So my mother was reading some pretty heavy stuff.
Awesome.
When I was 6 years old. Now, she didn't stay with that, but she had inquisitiveness and an intellect. My father also did, but he was a much shyer person.
Yeah.
So my parents were smart cookies. That's how I got to be able to do what I do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm hearing a lot of persistence is sort of the key. And I'm also hearing a bit of trusting in yourself and knowing that you're an artist, knowing who you are gives you the confidence to be persistent because you're very clear, it sounds like, in knowing how you want to show up in the world and the legacy that you want to leave. What would you say to the young people out there that really want to pursue that art? I know that you said follow your passion. You have to do that if that's who you are. But is there a piece of advice that you would tell people that are like, I'm this creative being and I'm not sure about the money?
I think that in the end, what we are human beings. That is, we don't exist without that status. And if a young person has chosen to be an artist, they are that within the context of being human. And humans need connection. Making paintings is an isolated experience, but the paintings that you make are the communicators to the world about who you are as a human being. Now, that's the example for an artist who's a painter, but that is also true and translates to whether you are a bus driver, a trash pickup person, a waitress, a banker, a lawyer, a doctor. It doesn't matter. It's who we are as human beings. And artists, I think, have special gifts. The tools they use are outside of language, and they can move people with those tools. But they have to recognize their own humanity to do that and connect to other humans. So I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but
it makes sense to me. And I told you before, I have a belief that everybody deep down is an artist. They just have to peel away the layers, because I think that's what makes us human beings, is our creativity and our artistry. So I appreciate that you are bringing your art and your gifts explicitly to the world, and letting a light shine on them. So Maggie Davis, where can people find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and it's Maggie Davis. I'm in Athens, Georgia, and I have a website. It's maggiedavisart.com, and I'm on Instagram with, I can't remember what the address is, Davis 4292, something like that. And also, my gallery represents my work, and Sandler Hudson Gallery is in Atlanta. And they have my work. So that's another place you can find me.
And if all else fails, you can Google Maggie Davis, artist, and lots of stuff comes up. So you are out there. Well, I do want to say to our audience, please don't forget to share the love. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Search for Money You Should Ask, all one word. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you prefer to watch our episodes, you can head over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. Maggie Davis, it has been such a pleasure, such an honor, and I'm excited for you to keep bringing more art into the world and giving us your gifts.
Thank you so much, Bob. This has been so sweet. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you.